Hello and welcome. My name is Stefan Poschik from CHC Corporate Health Consulting, and you are listening and watching the newest episode from our CHC expert interviews. So today I have a very special guest, and we are going to talk about a really interesting topic. So first of all, hello and welcome, Mark Boundy. Please introduce yourself.
Stefan, thank you so much. I appreciate your having me on. I am the value guy. I help companies focus on value. And I believe that the purpose of every company ever created is to create more priceable value for your customers than it costs you to deliver. That is the reason every company exists, even if it's a nonprofit. Because you take money in and you better do more with that money than those people could do by themselves or different or more powerfully. So value is one of those things that everybody thinks they know what it is. But if I were to ask 20 people in a room for a definition of value, I would probably get 21 or 22 definitions.
At least.
And so I would like to start you and start everybody understanding what value is. There's some definitions that are pithy and punchy, saying a value is whatever somebody will pay. True, good definition, but it doesn't tell you what to do to create more value. So remember, nobody buys your product or your service. They buy their own outcomes for their own reasons. And that means value is the desirability of the outcomes they bought from you. It's the desirability of the outcomes a customer achieves when they do business with you. So now value becomes something in your customer's mind. Value only exists in your customer's mind. It's not what you said, it's what they thought when you said it.
Yeah. Definitely.
And now you ask them what they just thought so that you know what value formed in their mind, because the only value that counts is not what you said, it's what they heard and what they thought. So I am maniacal about the fact that the most interesting part of your business as an entrepreneur or as a business owner happens before the first line in your corporate income statement. Before you wrote down the gross revenue, a customer decided that status quo is no longer worth it, that they had to understand why, understand their situation, figure out what they wanted to do about it, what options they could develop, who they might help, who they chose to help, and to finally decide to move forward with that help. And only after all of that, you get the top line in your income statement.
That's really an awesome approach. So first of all, I totally agree with you. Now is the question, an entrepreneur, how can he basically switch to this value-based approach, or where could he start to develop or do this kind of approach?
Well, shameless pitch. I'm writing a book. I've got one book out now called Radical Value. It's available on Amazon. I've got another book out that I'm calling The Infinity Loop, or The Infinity Effect. And I haven't quite decided on the title, but the idea is that, especially in business to business, which is my life, every business to business customer relationship involves you continuing to have that relationship, because that customer relationship goes on and on after a purchase. There's repurchase, there's cross-sell, there's upsell, there's renewal, there's every year you have to win that business over again. So the customer's buying journey is actually a flywheel or an infinity loop. So I call it an infinity loop, where one hand, the left-hand loop in my drawing, is the customer buying, that process where we went from status quo to deciding to buy something. On the right-hand loop, it's the installing, you learning how to use, mastering, measuring success, figuring out how to optimize it, and what else I can use, and what else should I be trying to do with this vendor. And so that is the ownership start. And all of the people in your company who you thought were there to answer customer complaint calls, who you measured to say, how many times an hour can you get the person on the other end of the phone to stop complaining so that you can do that as many times an hour. That's not your job. It's not how many calls you handle an hour. It's how well did I make each customer feel like they are a champion for my product? They're a master at using it, right? At the end of a customer service call, we've all had one. What would happen if instead of, right, just before you get off, the customer service agent asks, is there anything else I can do? Which sounds helpful, and it's meant to sound helpful, but what would happen if instead of that, somebody said, hey, do you have a minute? Because during our conversation, there's a trick to using our stuff. There's a trick to using our software. There's a trick to using our product that it seems like it would be really useful to you. Do you have a couple minutes for me to explain this little insider trick?
Yeah. This would be, in my opinion, a massive game changer, period.
Right. And so that just cannot happen when your KPI as a customer service agent is how many calls did you handle an hour?
Yeah.
You're not going to do that. You're incentivized to not do that. And your job should be to propel that customer through that part of the flywheel. So I say, get everybody in your customer to understand that entire customer's buying and ownership journey. Map that, understand that. And many companies have multiple journeys with multiple types of customers. Map them all, understand them all. Now I want you to map how many people from inside your company help the customer through each of the individual parts of that journey. What does that part of that journey look like for the customer, and how do you help them get through that journey? Not how do you help them do your part of the job? How do you get them to do their job and get them around their part of that journey with you? And it is a subtle but very important mindset. So I've worked with some companies that are really good at that, and I've worked with some companies who are really bad at that. And the companies who are elite at that grow faster, grow better. They have happier employees. Their employees know why they are there. They enjoy being there. They enjoy being of service. They enjoy being measured on how well they make a customer feel, not how many times you got somebody to stop complaining.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But this also means that the employees, for example, have a broader range of skill set, right? Because when we take the example you just gave us from the customer service, and at the end of the call, he basically starts to present something in addition to this customer. This basically he needs to also be able to present the product, not just handle complaints or handle questions, probably also have marketing and sales skills, much better communication skills, right?
Absolutely. And so the way a business school manager would say, oh, that's wasteful training. That's wasteful because I just want them to be good at handling calls and just focus on that. No, it's not. In business school, we learned to put people in a functional silo first and then build processes to connect the silos. I'm saying that's backwards. Have the customer's journey first. That process rules everything in your world and in your company. Process first, that process, the customer's ownership process first, and now build your expertise around that. And if your people have to know what comes before them and what comes after them, they should.
Yeah.
And that's not wasteful because the process comes first. And here's some great news. When you know what outcomes your customer is achieving, you can almost always price yourself at a premium.
Yeah.
So your profits pay for that, what you thought was waste, right? That wasteful spending is more than paid for. The companies that did this best, in my experience, are the most profitable companies, despite the fact that they teach their employees things that the silo monkeys of the world would not dream of teaching their employees.
Yeah, I totally agree. I give you another example, what we basically just discussed a couple of days ago, why I see a massive benefit for the approach you just described, because a couple of days ago, we had the biggest job event in Austria with over 5,000 people. And two of the main topics what was discussed was quiet quitting and employee engagement. And one of the 4 reasons why people become disengaged, why employees become disengaged, unhappy, unsatisfied in the workplace is because they miss the meaning or purpose. So basically, they are like you frame it, these silo workers, they are focusing on a very small piece of the process, but they basically do not see the outcome. So they don't see the whole process, they don't see the whole customer journey, because they are so focused just on one single topic or one single task, and people become bored, and at some point they say, yeah, what I'm doing here, I never ever see a result, I never ever see the outcome, I never ever get another information a couple of days or weeks later or something like that. And with the approach you just described, I think, this single topic is basically solved, because the people have much more responsibility, have much more different skills and different topics they can work. And you talked about this customer journey. I mean, when I'm working in when somebody calls me and is complaining, and the end of the call is I solved the complaint, plus probably I also upsold him to another product in my company, plus I showed him how to work or use my tools in a better and more efficient way. I mean, what's the better outcome? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with the idea that employee retention, employee satisfaction is very tied to giving people a tie and a direct line of sight to a purpose. And there are many purposes that a corporate leader could give, right? We are a green company. We want to be environmentally conscious. That's a fine purpose. However, there's many purposes you could choose, but there's one purpose: to be the best thing in our customer's life. That particular purpose, to increase value for our customer, is the one that pays best.
Yeah.
It is the one. So there are many purposes that could make a rewarding workplace. The one that makes a rewarding and successful and sustainable and long-term enjoyable workplace is the one I described. Yeah. So the other ones aren't wrong. And by all means, be environmentally conscious while you're being value focused. I'm not saying it's one or the other. It is not. There is a fallacy to say you must do one or the other. That I reject that. But make sure that your number one focus is to deliver outcomes to our customer.
Yeah.
And when we deliver outcomes, and when the customer knows that we help them deliver outcomes, and when we help them quantify the dollar or euro or pound outcome value of those outcomes, now we know how many of those euros that we created in the lives of our customer we deserve as our price premium.
Yeah, I agree.
And when we've had that discussion with our customer in a forthright way, they don't mind sharing that pie with us.
That's right. That's right. What do you tell companies who say, yeah, look, we have such a structured, boring process. There is no real purpose, and we have a hard time to basically find the real purpose why we are doing or how or what we are doing here. Because that's so old school business stuff, what we need to do at sometimes in governmental organizations or very old school organized companies. How can they really define their purpose or find this driving purpose for their employees?
Well, I guess that's the bad news to what I do. It's hard. It's hard to let people let go of their fiefdom, of their silos. And you either have to have a leader who's brave enough and strong enough to help a company change. And the bigger the company, the harder that change is. Sometimes I just have to ask, do you have any small competitors I can talk to?
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, I don't need 1,000 clients a year.
Yeah.
What I do is going to help a company in an industry compete much better. And if you're big and you think you're successful as is, that's fine. If you have a smaller, more nimble competitor who wants to compete by being more nimble,
yeah,
do that.
I like it. I like it very much. Yeah. So how does this affect the lifetime value in your opinion? Because lifetime value is something what, in my opinion, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they are not very experienced as an entrepreneur, completely underestimate what's the power of the lifetime value of a customer is.
You can calculate the lifetime value of the customer. And excuse me, I gotta turn this phone to do not disturb.
That's no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the lifetime value. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So lifetime value of a customer. I mean, it's a simple calculation. What is the profit on each purchase that customer is likely to make? And the more repeat purchases and the bigger the repeat purchases, the more the lifetime value. The more profitable each purchase is, the higher the lifetime value. So 1%, the average company in the Fortune 1000, if they are able to achieve a 1% increase in sales price, remember, your cost didn't change at all. A 1% price increase usually gives an 11% increase to your net income line.
Wow. Yeah. When that's not enough,
so,
they will not understand it. Yes.
And remember, that's 1%. That also means every 1% you can get your salespeople to stop discounting. Same thing, right? Yeah. And what salesperson asks for only 1%?
Normally, nobody, right?
Right. So if 10% of your salespeople ask for an average of 10%, that's a 1% price decrease. Yeah. So at all points in that calculation of lifetime value, we price to value, which means we're much more profitable, which means the lifetime value goes up. When you focus on making your customers extremely satisfied and renewal and cross-sell and upsell, you get more trips around that infinity loop. If you think, and I say that I have a trite saying, if you think your customer journey has a beginning and an end, unfortunately, you're probably right.
Yeah, because you think there is an end.
Right? If you think there's an end, there will be.
I'm sure, yeah.
And so the idea of propelling a customer through a flywheel so that they get more and more excited each trip around that flywheel to have found you and to be working with you, that lifetime value can go to infinity.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Do you sometimes hear the argument, yeah, but this is so much more effort. We need to invest so much more time to communicating with the customers, or based on the KPIs, okay, I need to make 20 calls a week or 20 calls a day or 20 calls an hour or something like that. Do you get these arguments that people or companies do not want to jump on this value-based approach?
I do and I don't.
Okay.
Everybody measures, and most KPIs are inwardly focused. How many calls did you make? And every sales manager I have ever talked has said, I measure how many calls they make when I'm really interested in how many good conversations they had. I just don't know how to measure it. So I keep measuring how many dials they made.
Mm-hmm.
I know better, but the measurement, I learned how to take these measurements from an old guy who learned how to take these measurements from a dead guy. And it is the tyranny of the way we've always done it. And it's and as we have specialized more, the KPIs get more narrow and more inwardly focused and less customer focused. So you already know, Vice President of Sales, that you want to measure quality and not quantity, but you're measuring quantity. Let's look at your KPIs. That's quantity, not quality. That one there, quantity, not quality. That one there, quantity. So how about if we just rethink the KPIs? A famous statistician said, and this was a guy who was a quant jock, right? He was a numbers jockey. He said, far better an approximate answer to the right question than the precise answer to the wrong question, which you can always make more precise.
I agree.
There's always a more precise way to measure the wrong stuff.
Yeah. How would you measure this, for example, the quality of the calls? Can you give us an example?
Yes. So in a great conversation, a great sales conversation, you're discovering what outcomes a customer wants to achieve. What aren't you achieving? And if you are able to ask that question to the point where if you were able to achieve it, what would that mean? Can you measure that in euros? Right? And so if you can actually identify value from the first conversation, and you can identify more value every conversation. So the company that was best in this in all the world always asked each other, what is our value?
I like this very, very much.
Right? Yep. What's our value? And as a product manager, a salesperson would call me, and I was dying for salespeople to call me and want to sell my product, right? And a salesperson would call me and say, hey, I think I want to sell your product in this application. Yeah. And I had to ask, what's our value? Yeah. And if he didn't answer, here's the customer, here's their business, here's their industry, here's how they compete, here's how I think we can help them compete better, here's how much better, here's how many dollars better, because we were in the States. And here's how many of those dollars I think we can compete. If they were not able to answer that full arc of that story, they didn't know the value. And I'd say, call me back when you know our value.
So
to somebody I was
call you back, right?
Right. And that was to a salesperson I was hoping was going to call me so I could start selling my stuff, because and everybody in the company, like when I would have a great sales call with that customer, we'd finally get through that, and I would go back and say, hey, I need to make a quick sample run for this customer. And I would go out to the manufacturing floor and I'd say, you're running something just like this. Can you just run 20 more feet of this cable for me? And he would say, I can, but what's our value? And I had to answer that before he would even lift his finger. An engineer, I'd have a drawing. It was exactly like the drawing we made for this customer, but I just changed the customer name and gave it a new number, part number. And I'd say, here, it's ready. We actually already have the tooling for this, and the process is already written because we make it. Yeah. And he'd say, what's the value? Before you get my initials, I have to know the value. And it was maddening, but it forced the salespeople to identify if there was enough value to win the deal. Right? So I have a metric that I call deal winning value. Have you identified enough value for the customer that our price premium is going to appear like nothing compared to that value?
Yeah, I like this very much. I
right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, from the very first conversation, even if you don't identify as much value, but if that first conversation is, here's an outcome that we almost always win on, but I've discovered that this customer wants this outcome.
I
Right?
definitely like it. I definitely do, Mark. So thank you so much already, because I guess our listeners already got so much value out of you. But I'm sure they want to know more about you, or probably also your book. So what would be the best way to connect with you?
Well, my email is mark@Boundy Consulting. Boundy is BOUNDY consulting.com. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn at Mark Boundy. There's very few Mark Boundys in the world. I'm the one who's not a professional golfer in New Zealand. Or go onto my website, boundyconsulting.com.
Okay, perfect. No, we definitely are going to post this also below, and we're also going to tag you so people can directly reach out to you and ask you more about the value-based approach. So Mark, again, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I already took a bunch of notes, and I definitely have to implement more about the value-based approach in my own companies. So thank you for that. And yeah, for all your listeners out there, just connect with Mark and do what you basically just heard from him, because you can increase the satisfaction inside your company, but also from your customers, plus lifetime value. I loved it, and take care. A lot of success for you, and hear you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.